Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Jim Johnson from Asurion. Just some background on me. I've been at Asurion exactly 1 year as of today. Today's my anniversary, but I thought it would be much more fun to be here at CA World, and so far it's been a great event. I hope you're all having a good time. Before that, I worked for 17 years in various architecture functions at Xerox, and then I went off and explored some of the various startups that were out there until coming to Asurion. And today I'm going to be talking to you about some of my experiences at Asurion with developer API self-service portals. That's on my side. So I'm going to start out telling you a little bit about Asurion. It's a very important, very innovative company, but not a very well-known name. So I think you'll be very interested to find out who Asurion is and why APIs are so important to us. And then, despite a very successful API program, I'm going to talk to you about some of the problems we found and that we're trying to address with the portal. I'm going to talk to you about some of our different types of portal users that we have and some of their unique requirements, and then get into the architecture that we're using for integrating the portal with our gateways and how that's been implemented. And including in that some of the features we really like of CA's products. And ultimately, the benefits we're seeing from using the self-service portal. Wrong direction. Who is Asurion? This is from marketing, not from me, but they say that we are a company that understands technology and the role it plays in everyday life. We urgently repair or replace your devices and electronics. We're available with a OneTouch solution to help you and all of your tech help needs. Available 24/7, we speak 6 languages and work across any device, platform, or provider. I don't really know what that means, but they told me to say that. So in my words, what we do is we are a trusted partner to some of the biggest retailers, manufacturers, and service providers in the world. Our primary business initially is device protection. And what that means to most people is we're the guys that do all the cell phone insurance. If you have a cell phone, there's a pretty good chance you're doing business with us. We cover all of the broken, damaged, lost, stolen cell phones. We have over 305 million customers, all paying a monthly subscription. So it's a very fast-growing business. Premier Tech Support is sort of a build on that. It's a separate division, but is often bundled with the device protection. That's where we offer tech support for those devices. So if you have a cell phone and you can't get the camera to work, you can't download the pictures, you can't get it to connect to your Bluetooth speakers, we have incredible technical support people that you can call that will make anything work. And seriously, not just call center people, they are amazing technical resources that can make that happen. The third business area is electronics protection, which is similar to device protection, just different devices and different retailers. That's for the bigger items like computers, laptops, refrigerators, big screen TVs, things you buy at Costco and Walmart, Home Depot. If you're buying an extended warranty there, if you're getting tech support, there's a good chance you're getting it from Asurion. So you might not know the name, but you probably do know Asurion. We've been around for 20 years and help people all around the world. We're in 50 different offices, and actually I don't know how many different countries, but I know it's a lot. Headquarters is in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I work out of. 17,000 employees. Okay, now's the fun part. About Asurion, how do we use APIs? Why are APIs important to Asurion? Well, like I said, Asurion's not really the front-end guy. Asurion's sort of behind the scenes making things happen for a lot of these retailers. So we keep that behind-the-scenes activity going through APIs. We have APIs, so when you walk into a cell phone provider and you buy a cell phone, you want to get insurance or an extended warranty plan, when you go through their process, you're going through our process also, but you're just not seeing Asurion. There's lots of interactions going on through APIs to make sure that everything's being done correctly. You know, what are the options for that particular phone? Does this particular person have any fraud history and things like that? It's an incredible amount of complexity. And it doesn't matter whether you go into the store, you go to the website, you call into it, it's all going through the same series of APIs to make things work. Similarly, when you make a claim, If you drop your phone in the pool or crack the screen and you need it fixed, you call your cell phone provider or you go to our website, you're going to go through the same claim process, and it doesn't matter how you do it, through your cell phone, through a mobile device, call, web, it's all the same. By that I mean it's what we call omni-channel. So it's all going into the same back end. So you could start a process on your phone, finish it on the web, update it on chat. Everything's going through a series of APIs to a common back end. This is to remind me, the other big area of growth we have for APIs is in voice. We're having a lot of activity around things like Amazon's Alexa, Google Home, and that's a whole new series of APIs because the interfaces are a bit different. It's natural language, it's not as structured, and so we're having pretty rapid growth in those APIs. In fact, at this point, we have probably close to 600 APIs, and I've been told we're adding about 10 APIs a day. That's a lot of APIs to keep track of. So what's the problem we're having? Our problem is that we have so many APIs that we sometimes have difficulty with developers finding the right APIs and understanding how to use them. We have great APIs, they work beautifully, but they're all developed by different parts of the business, sometimes in different countries, and they're all managed sort of separately. So when we come into a partner, they often have very inconsistent documentation to look at to find out how things work. And also there's just a question of the accuracy of the documentation. Whenever there's a manual step to documentation, I'm always a little bit wary about whether it's 100% correct. And typically what we see is it's all right until you change the API and then somebody forgets to update the documentation and eventually things are out of sync. So we really would like to get manual steps out of the documentation process. A problem we have is we don't have one centralized portal for our partners to see our APIs. We have lots of different portals. You know, internally we've got Confluence, we've got SharePoint, we've got websites, all kinds of different places to go and find out about APIs, but we don't have one place that's like the source of record to find out everything. So we need to address that. And despite the rapid growth we have in APIs, we're getting pushed to go faster. So we're being pushed to take out any manual steps that are in place for creating or deploying new APIs to minimize those, both for speed and also for costs. And also, API developers need an easy way to get API keys. That's what enables them to get access to using the APIs. And they need an easy way to test. I'll get more into all those later. The types of users we have, there's sort of two main populations. We have the API developers and the API owners. That's the people that are creating the APIs that need publishing and management capabilities. And they're focused on building great APIs, and the documentation is sort of a secondary thing. So we want to make that as automated as possible for them. Then we have the actual application developers. These are the people that use the APIs. So they want to find the APIs, which is our first hurdle, to make sure they know the API is there, and then they need to know how to use it, and sort of all the details about the right and wrong ways to use things and the things that can go wrong. So API developers want to create documentation for APIs, automated when possible, and also we're creating a big emphasis around Swagger and Open API. And if you're working with APIs, you probably know about Swagger. If you don't, you need to learn about it because that's really the common denominator in terms of communicating information about an API. And we do those manually now, and we're looking to use them in a completely automated fashion, so they're generated directly off of the gateways and such, so we know that they're always 100% correct, because that's one small issue we've had with like little errors in a Swagger file can cause a big problem. We also want integration with CI/CD. That's our automated deployment processes. So when we release a new API, we want it to all be automated, not just deploying the API, but also the documentation about the API and information about it. That should all be click one button and everything gets deployed. We also have concerns around usage plans and throttling. When the developers deploy APIs, they have certain capacities and such, and it's very important to us to make sure that no one customer, because we have a lot of different customers, and we got to make sure one customer can't overwhelm the systems, and of course, key management. Application developers have some different issues. They're looking just to find out what we've got. It's like what APIs are out there and what can they do, and once they find things that look interesting, how do they work? What do I need to do to access this API? So we want a very consistent, very correct, very up-to-date system of documentation. And once you've found an API you want to work with, we want them to be able to test it like immediately. Not have to go off and spend a couple weeks building a prototype to access it. We want them to be able to just point and click and be able to try out the API and see some of the results coming back. And then once they know they want it, they need an easy process to consume the APIs. And of course, you've got to be able to monitor what's going on with the APIs. This is actually a slide from CA that I liked actually, because it sort of shows the whole ecosystem of APIs. And what I liked about it initially is that I think Asurion does a great job with just about all of this. We're great at managing, monitoring, securing, consuming, deploying APIs, except we're not good about discovery. We have a lot of problem that there's a lot of back and forth between our partners and developers and our developers in different locations trying to find out which API to use, how it works and all that. So I think missing that one piece, I'm realizing just makes the whole system not work as well. So I really appreciate that slide from CA. This is another slide from them, which I like sort of just because, again, it shows the developer portal. Oh, are you on the safe slide? Hang on, I was seeing a different slide than you were. There we go. I like this slide because it shows the developer portal as being on equal tiers with the actual gateways, which I think was not our point of view. Sort of the gateways are the whole universe, and documentation stuff is sort of an afterthought. So I think it's a very well thought out slide. This slide's great because it shows sort of the division of duties between the gateway and the portal. Again, I think we're making great utilization of the gateways and are pretty impressed with the capabilities there. And then when it comes to the portal, we're realizing there's a whole lot of functionality there that we're not leveraging, but we actually really need it. In particular, I keep harping on discovery. Discovery is so important. Nobody's going to use your API if they can't find it and they can't figure out how to use it. Even if they're like a partner, we've had sort of the impetus of this was that we had a partner that was working very aggressively to work with us, and they ended up pushing back their schedules a lot because they felt that they couldn't trust the documentation we were providing on the APIs because it was coming from different sources and different streams. And so we realized we really need, that should be the last problem we have, is documenting how an API works. So it's all around discovery, which is helping developers find and consume APIs and managing the ones they have. And that's where we've been really happy with the CA's products in this. And actually, specific products we're talking about, we use the Gateway 9.2 and the Developer Portal 4.0, which I know they have some previous products, but I'm talking about their newest products is what we've been working with and been very impressed with. And some nice thing, well, actually this picture shows that it does also work not just web pages, but with mobile devices and tablets and such. This is sort of a, well, somewhat simplistic, but typical architecture for one of our portal situations, the portal being up at the top. And then we have a lot of gateways. So we have a lot of gateways porting up into the portal, reporting information. And one of the things I want to call out here is off to the left is what they call PAPI, which is their portal API, which was sort of a minor feature when we first started working with, but it's actually something we're really excited about. What PAPI does is it's CA's API for talking to their portal. So anything you could do as an administrator in their portal, you can do through their PAPI API, which is great for us in terms of being, like I said, we want things automated. So if we want to automate deployment, we can minimize any kind of manual changes to the portal by using their PAPI API. So that's a feature we're really excited about. This sort of speaks to what I mentioned about us having lots of gateways. I think we probably have about 30 gateways for various geographies and various functions. And we like the idea that we can sort of cluster them together into a portal however we want, either like the whole universe into one portal or separately. And from the end user, they don't really need to know which business group published an API, where it's being hosted, which geography it's for. Just here's an API, this is what it does, and this is how you get to it. And so that portal sort of makes that all sort of transparent to the end users. And this is showing also just geographically we can segment it. If we want, we can have a portal for Europe and a portal for the US and a portal for Asia, or we can have one portal that's global and has everything on there. We sort of like that it's at our option. We can split things up how we want. Okay, now getting a little bit specifically more into the portal. This is the default portal UI, which I sort of bring up just because I was so impressed how quickly we could bring this up. We're using the SaaS portal. It can be hosted on-premise, or you can do it in the cloud, or you can do SaaS. We've been working with the SaaS version, and it was pretty impressive. Once they set up accounts, and once we connected our gateways, I swear in minutes, we had content up there, we could go through our APIs, and then we just had to work on the content management. But it's also very customizable. So you get all of the CSS and the JavaScripts and all that you need to change it. So our portal looks more like this. So it's more Asurion looking than CA looking, but we're very happy with the functionality. This is an example of one of the API screens, which is actually, if you're familiar with Swagger UI and such, it's a sort of a superset of that, which is really nice. It shows you all, and again, this is all automatically, it generates all this. It shows you all the methods, the endpoints, the parameters, and I don't have a screenshot of it, but you can click through, see all the parameters, fill in values, hit try it, and it will actually submit a live request to the endpoint and show you the results of it. That's like huge for our developers, because that's sort of how you learn. We can actually play with it. The documentation may say one thing, but when you can actually play with putting good values and bad values in and see the results, that's a big plus. And also, this is actually a page for one of the PAPI APIs. So this is what CA actually uses their tool for documenting their API, which I sort of like. So this is the portal page for their own API and how it works. This is the admin menu, which I'm just showing because there's a lot of functionality, and I'm very impressed with sort of the ease of use. We've had people go in and play with it, and it's pretty intuitive how to work with things. And there's a lot of functionality that we used to have out distributed in different groups and such that you can all do centrally. You can create users, create APIs, group them into applications, assign keys, disable keys, all the stuff we need to do right in a pretty friendly UI. And again, I am intentionally showing something that's not customized. This is just like out of the box, you get all this stuff. I'm not doing an ad for CA, I just like the product. And one of the things I really liked was, because we have a lot of gateways, how easy it was to connect. So on that prior menu, on the admin menu, if you go into setup, you can go into proxies, and you get this screen, and you can say add proxy. I have one called Asurion 1. Add a proxy, I'll call it Asurion 2. It generates this nice little URL for enrollment, which I thought was very cool. And then you go into the policy manual. If you're a CA person and you're used to the API gateway, you're very familiar with the policy manager. If you're not, policy manager is sort of the developer desktop for building APIs with the API gateway. That's where you create APIs and transformations and routing and security rules, all that. So developers are all very at home there. And they can publish the APIs from here. But now you can also enroll a gateway with the portal. All you do is the URL from the previous page, you port it in there, and then they're now in sync. So the changes made in the portal or in the gateways are now synced within 1 minute to 30 minutes, depending on the particular feature, which again, that is a big time saver for us, particularly because we're not talking about one gateway we're syncing, we're talking about syncing maybe 20 or 30 gateways with lots of different APIs. And this allows us to make sure that they're all in sync and being documented correctly. So we're really excited about this. This is just a quick screen showing how we can easily create applications, API keys, and the end users can do it themselves. Again, that was a big time savings for us. Another feature we really like, this is a really ugly slide, by the way. It doesn't have my time to make it. It's more to just remind me what we can do. One of the big issues we have, because we have lots of different development teams that are publishing APIs up there, and this is just to remind me to tell you that we can segment the authority of each group so they can only update their APIs. Because the concern we had, we don't want one development team to accidentally be breaking or changing the documentation of a different development team. So if we define our roles and privileges correctly, we can set it up so we can have, a dozen different development teams in there, publishing their information up into the portal, and be assured that what they put in there is up there, and that somebody else didn't change it. So that's a nice feature. Analytics, they have a really nice dashboard in there that's sort of automatic, so I wanted to include that because it's always important to our users. Whether you're just testing an API or whether it's in production, I think you want to know how it's performing, how many hits you're seeing, any errors you're seeing, what responses you're coming back, and it's sort of nice that that all comes back just automatically. So I felt that was a big plus on the portal. I mean, we have some separate, like offline, like much more advanced, more detailed analytics, but just in terms of the stuff that people care about mostly day to day, it does a great job in terms of presenting that information. So some of the portal's advantages that we think, benefits that we think we're seeing, we have the same portal being used by internal developers and external partners. Even just having one internal, one external would be a big plus for us. But this is a big step forward for us, having one source of record for the information about the APIs that we have. And like I said, each development team can have control to only their APIs, so we don't have to worry about corruption of the existing APIs. We really like the SaaS hosted portal, but you also have the option of on-premise and cloud and things like that, but I think the SaaS is a great option. One thing I didn't mention before, which has actually been really great for us, is the single sign-on, which was super easy to configure. But because we have an existing authentication system for all of our users, both internal and external, so being able to just plug into that instead of having to create new accounts and such was a big time saver for us. Easily test live APIs. I think I talked about that. PAPI portal APIs allow automated deployment as part of CI/CD process. I talked about that. That works beautifully, gives you lots of options in terms of how you want to automate things. And of course, Swagger Open API. Faster time to market for new APIs. As fast as we're moving, this is helping us move even faster because the delay we were having with educating new customers and new partners about our APIs was getting to be more significant than I think anyone expected. And I think having this, at least a centralized place, so we can see all the APIs and how they're documented, and if they're not up to par, we can get them fixed. And again, anything that reduces manual labor, reduce costs. Of course, everybody likes that. Faster onboarding for application developers. The quicker they find out about the APIs, the better. Consistent presentation of API information. We were sort of surprised when we put them all up together. Even though we have pretty strict naming standards and such for APIs and how they should be built, they're not necessarily policed that rigorously. When we start publishing them all together, we start seeing a lot of deviation from our naming standards. So it got a little bit confusing to figure out what some of the APIs were doing. So even just having them all together so we can compare them next to each other has revealed some things we need to do to sort of clean them up and make them more intuitive in terms of what they do. Consistent metrics, I talked about the analytics. Reusability and redundancy, that was something totally unexpected that we ran into. When we put all the APIs together, we found out we had like lots of APIs that do the same thing. Like we might have a need to have an API that validates the customer address. Well, and every business unit needs that. Well, when we're looking at it, we found out that just about every business unit built their API to do the same thing because they weren't aware of the API existing in the other business units. So now we're sort of seeing this sort of, is very dramatically apparent that we need to sort of clean that up and either, if there is a difference between those APIs, make it clearer, or if they're not, we need to start consolidating down. So it's possible our number of APIs could actually go down, which would be a good thing. And also when people are going to build a new API, they have an easy method to look and see what's already there. So hopefully they'll reuse the APIs that are already existing. Self-service access to API keys. I can't understate how important that is, because that's really the key to start using an API. And now we have a sort of manual process for requesting API keys and such. So at least for testing, now we're going to have a completely automated system. As long as you have access to the system, we'll give you a key to try out any API you want. And then if you like it, we have an approval process to get you approved for production keys and such. This is sort of a top-down picture of our sort of API environment. And I like to think The top dotted line there, I think below that line, I think Asurion has done an amazing job of building APIs that are well designed, perform well, they're monitored well, they're scalable, no problems there. Above the line, I think that's where we realize we've not done such a good job. You know, it's great to have them out there, but if people can't find them, if people don't understand how to use them, we're not where we want to be. And I think that having this portal centralized with all the information, and it'll take some time to get the content where it all needs to be, but I think a big part of it is with the portal, at least you can see the differences. You can see everything. You're not hunting through 12 different websites to figure out what documentation's out there on the APIs. So we think that this has been, in a lot of ways more successful than we expected in terms of making things visible and available. So that's all I've got. So thank you for being here.